here today. I start one of my free talks, so I hope you are not too much tired, because it's a lot of information. But I think it's very important to see with you the new ASCO-CAP guidelines for HER2, because there are some changes that will impact probably the number of HER2-positive breast cancers. So we were having two different cutoff values. The value from the FDA, so the old ones, with 3+ being defined by more than 10% of positive cells, strictly superior to 10%, or ratio HER2 over chromosome 17 superior or equal to 2, and an HER2 copy number superior or equal to 4. Then we had the 2007 ASCO-CAP guidelines with an HER2 positivity, so the 3+ defined by more strictly superior to 30% of positive cells, defined by a complete membrane staining of strong intensity, or a ratio superior to 2.2, or more than 6 copies of HER2, strictly superior to 6 copies. So we used worldwide these new ASCO-CAP guidelines, but they were not in the package insert of HER2, and in fact they were not related to treatment. They were not meant to replace FDA scoring system for trastuzumab eligibility. Those new ASCO-CAP guidelines were just here to ensure that with this higher cutoff value for 3+, we will have an higher level of concordance between immunohistochemistry and ISH results. In St. Gallen in 2011, so 3 years ago, before these new guidelines, we were already knowing that we will have change in the HER2 scoring system, because we had some papers from Edith Perez and others showing that using a higher cutoff, like 30% or 2.2 ratio, we were missing patients, and that those patients in the clinical trial, between 2 and 2.2 or between 10 and 30%, were responding to treatment. So in St. Gallen 3 years ago, we were voting that probably we should only use the FDA cutoff value for HER2 treatment decision. So the new guidelines, and I will use mainly the CAP guidelines that you can find on internet, and I will add my personal comments. So these new guidelines are modifying the diagnostic algorithm to account for specimen and genomic heterogeneity. They add bright field ISH as an acceptable method for testing. In France, we accepted the bright field method, so CISH, KISH, BRISH in general for testing in 2010, but it was not in the ASCO-CAP guidelines. And something that is, in my opinion, very interesting is that they discuss challenging scenario, like cases where you should say, well, it's not normal to have this result of HER2 because this tumor is this kind or this kind. So among the clinical questions in those guidelines, the one I'm going to go through today is what is the optimal testing algorithm for the assessment of HER2 status. They also, in these guidelines, develop a strategy for quality assurance, but I will not go into details in that. So first of all, immunohistochemistry. So the first change for immunohistochemistry is that the definition of 3+. The definition of 3+ now is a circumferential membrane staining that is complete, intense, and with it strictly superior to 10% of the cells. So a decrease in the definition and in the cutoff value of the 3+. Then there is two changes for the 2+ definition. The first change is that we can accept for 2+ to have an incomplete membrane staining. It's a very big move in breast. You know that we accept incomplete membrane staining for gastric cancer, but we were not accepting this for breast cancer. So we can accept it, and I think that here we have to be strict. It's an incomplete membrane staining, but we show at low magnification. If it's an incomplete membrane staining of a very low intensity that you have to be at 40x to see, it's probably not a good case for ISH because we will order a lot of in situ techniques. And of course, you are also in the category of 2+ if you have a complete and circumferential membrane staining, intense, but less than 10% of positive cells. So if it's not a 3+, but it's a case where you have heterogeneity with very small foci of HER2 positive cases cells. You have to fish those cases or to ish those cases to see if you have amplified cells. So of course after that you have a change in the definition of 1+, because in fact it's all the cases that are not 2+, so you have less cases in the 1+ category, more cases in the 2+ category, and you still have the same definition for 0. Okay, if I could change my slide. So here, what we have here is the strong determination not to miss any positive case when using immunohistochemistry. By comparison, in 2007, they were afraid of false positive cases. So they put some rules to avoid false positive case. And with experience, with a lot of new kits, with a lot of quality assurance, they see the number of HER2 cases decreasing, and now they are afraid, and we are afraid, to have false negative case. In France, the average positivity for 3+ is 11%, so it's very low for early breast cancer. So, and it's 13% if we add the 2+ that are tested by FISH. So we have now low numbers of HER2. So they change the criterion for 3+, the bar returns to 10%, and they change the criterion for 2+. But I insist on the fact that probably here we only need to quote 2+, the cases with incomplete membrane staining that we saw at low magnification, like the Ruschow, the microscope rule that we have in gastric cancer. Now the cutoff value for single probe ISH. So it can be FISH or it can be SISH. So a case is called no longer amplified but positive. It's also important because there was some difference. People were calling low amplification, high amplification. Now you say it's ISH positive. So it's ISH positive when you have a single probe, when you have more than 6 copies. So what is important here is the number of copies. Superior or equal to 6, it's positive. Inferior to 4, which was the first cutoff in the FDA, it's negative. And when it's between 4 and 6, it's called equivocal. So if it's equivocal, you need to order a reflex test. So if you have already performed immunohistochemistry and if it's equivocal by ISH, you can try to test another block, or if it's a biopsy, to test on the surgical specimen. But if it's still equivocal, you will see that in the guidelines they say that now we can treat those patients. We can have a discussion, a multidisciplinary discussion, and treat the equivocal patients, which is something which is also very new. So more patients will be treated also with that. And when you score ISH, you have to select the area where you are scoring ISH with immunohistochemistry. So you try to score regions with homogeneous positivity, possibly identified before by immunohistochemistry, and as usual with ISH, especially with FISH, you should avoid to count the area where you have overlapping nuclei because you can have false aspect of amplified cells. It's much more complicated with dual FISH or dual ISH because here you have 5 possibilities. So what is important first is the ratio. So if the ratio HER2 over chromosome 17 is superior or equal to 2, it's positive. It's always positive, even in the case where you have less than 4 copies. First case, for instance, can be case with monosomy, and I will deal with that at the end of my talk. So this category is of cases with less than 4 copies is quite exceptional in this setting of a ratio superior or equal to 2, but it can exist, and it's called positive. If you have a ratio inferior or equal to 2, inferior to 2, sorry, you should think it could be negative, but it's not always negative. It's positive if you have more than 6 copies, and it's negative if you have less than 4 copies. But if with this ratio of less than 2, you have a number between 4 and 6, the case will be called equivocal. So here, with the dual ISH, if the ratio is superior or equal to 2, it's always positive, whatever the number of copies is. And if the ratio is so-called negative, because inferior to 2, it can still be positive if you have more than 6 copies. What is important, in my opinion, for the message for ISH is that you need to score by selecting the areas that are immunohistochemistry positive. Of course, it's not important if you have a very homogeneous case, but it's very important in the case of heterogeneous cases. For instance, here, in this case that is clearly heterogeneous, where to count? If you count in the lower part, it's a 3+, because you have more than you have enough cells to count. If you do ISH here, you have more than 20 cells, and it will be amplified. If you count in the upper right, it will be a 2+, because you have less than 10% of positive cells inside immunohistochemistry. And if you count into this area, you could have more amplified cells because maybe it's a problem of immunohistochemistry, or you will have a negative case if the negative cells are really negative. And if you count in the other area, it will be completely negative. So where you select the places to do your immunohistochemistry, your ISH, is very important because you can go from a positive case to a negative case. And this is here another example. If I count in the lower part, it's not amplified. If I count in the upper part by ISH, it will be amplified. This is an example of the last cases that we had in the last month. In my hospital, we receive a lot of cases from outside that are 2+ cases, so a lot of cases where we can have ambiguous results. And you can see here that from 14 cases that were gray zone with the 2007 guidelines, I have a switch for 57% for 8 cases. And most of the case, the switch is from gray zone to amplified, but I have some cases where it's from gray zone to non-amplified, especially for cases that were monosomic cases. Then, for the recommendation, they had a lot of recommendation, of course, for pathologists. And one of the recommendations is that we should ensure that at least one tumor sample is tested for every patient, meaning that HER2 testing is mandatory for breast cancer, even if it's an old woman, even if it's a grade 1 tumor. We need to test at least one sample for HER2. And we can use biopsy. It's a big change because in the 2007 guidelines, they were recommending to test in priority the surgical specimen. And due to fixation problems, to all the pre-analytical problems that we can have on surgical sample, it's now well recognized as it is in for ER and PR, but biopsy can be a very interesting material to test because the fixation is much more controlled, the pre-analytical steps are much more controlled than for the surgical specimen. So, as I said, they have examined different situations where we can address the question, do I need to retest or not? So there are cases where retesting is not necessary. We shouldn't reorder an HER2 test on a surgical specimen if on a biopsy HER2 was negative and the case was a grade 1 ductal carcinoma or lobular carcinoma, ER and PR positive, a pure tubular, a pure mucinous, a pure cribriform carcinoma, or a pure adenoid cystic carcinoma, because usually those tumors are HER2 negative. So if we have that on a biopsy, we can be confident we will not find anything on the surgical specimen. There are now histopathological features that are suggestive of possible HER2 test discordance. If on a biopsy we have a positive HER2 test, we should retest for HER2 on the surgical specimen if it's the opposite of the other situation. If on the biopsy you had a grade 1 tumor, ER positive, a tubular, a mucinous, a cribriform, and adenoid cystic. This probably that was positive for HER2. This is probably a false negative due to crush artifacts or other problems, and you need to retest your case on the surgical specimen. Then they address some situation where we really need to think that it could be a false negative case. And this is when you have a biopsy that is negative and the tumor on the surgical specimen, so the biopsy is negative. You have the surgical specimen and it's a grade 3. Or you have a biopsy with very few tumor cells. Or when you compare the surgical specimen and the biopsy, you had like grade 1 tumor or low grade 2, and on the surgical specimen you have an undifferentiated carcinoma high grade, so you have a discordance and you can have probably an heterogeneous pattern. If the core biopsy was equivocal, after 2 tests, you need to retest on the surgical specimen. And of course, if you have any doubt about the quality of the core biopsy, and if you read between the lines, it's probably also if you don't trust the colleague that rendered the case of the biopsy, you say, well, I don't trust this lab or I don't trust this pathologist, I need to retest. But I think it's very important to have those guidelines, because if we test all the cases on biopsy, for economic reason, we are not going to retest all the cases on the surgical specimen because it will cost double. So we can identify situations where we can be completely confident not to retest on the surgical specimen. So then what is positive? So positive is when it's a 3+, so with the new cutoff of 10%, or if it's an ISH positive case, with no discordance in terms of histopathology. It's equivocal, and we need to order a reflex test when it's a 2+, with the new cutoff and including the incomplete membrane staining. Or if it's an ISH equivocal situation, so between 4 and 6 copies, for instance, or if it's inferior to 2 with 4 and 6 copies. Assuming also that we don't have any discordance. Those cases, it's interesting because we had the micropapillary and the glandular carcinoma that can be 1+, but can be amplified. An example of a micropapillary carcinoma, we have a strong membrane staining, but it's not always complete. It's due to the biology of the micropapillary carcinoma. And you can see here with CISH that this case is amplified, clearly. But here we need to call it equivocal. We cannot call it a 3+, but we need to call it a 2+, an equivocal test to be able to issue this. A case is negative if a single test or all tests are 1+ or negative by immunohistochemistry or ISH negative, assuming that we don't have any discordance. And also very important, we have a category that is indeterminate. And I think that pathologists sometimes we are afraid to use that because it refers to the quality of the specimen, and we always feel guilty if the specimen is not of good quality. But sometimes the quality, and Dr. Sahin said that before, it's a team work, and it's also the duty of the surgeon, it's also the duty of the radiologist to ensure the quality of the specimen. And if we have crush or border artifacts on the biopsy, which is not our fault, it's a problem of the type of biopsy that was used, we cannot be sure. Sometimes we have some staining, we are not sure whether it's positive or not. We can call this specimen and determinate a specimen. Then we should, and I really insist on that, we should evaluate ISH by reference to what we have on immunohistochemistry, and also comparing what we have in normal breast and tumor cells. And it's important because sometimes it's not the same lab that is performing immunohistochemistry and ISH, and we need to have pathologists look at ISH specimen to be sure that we are looking in the good areas. Then they have changed the guidelines for fixation and for type of fixative to be completely in line with the previous guideline that Dr. Sahin presented to you on ER and PR. For instance, the guidelines for HER2 are referring to 6 to 48 hours, so it was normal to change to 6 to 72 hours to be in line with the ER-PR guidelines. And of course, it's important to participate to external quality assurance test and to develop quality assurance in the lab on a day-to-day basis. In case of an apparent histopathologic discordance, the pathologist has to decide to do other tests, alternative tests. He can also discuss with the oncologist and tell the oncologist, well, I need more time to give my final diagnosis because it's a test where I'm not completely confident with the results, so I need to retest. And I thought this sentence was a little funny in my own experience because I don't ask the authorization to the oncologist to perform a new test, but it's really written here that the pathologist may pursue additional HER2 testing without conferring with the oncologist. And also, if we have cases that are not in those guidelines where we cannot go to a final decision, don't hesitate to use the term equivocal for immunohistochemistry or for ISH. Also, there are recommendations for the oncologist. So for the oncologist is to request HER2 testing on every primary invasive breast cancer and on metastatic sites. So meaning that we should retest the metastatic sites when it is possible, because it's not always possible, and it's not always also worth it, in my opinion, if it's a late recurrence in an PR positive case, HER2 negative, with bone metastasis. It's probably not an HER2 positive disease, but they should, for instance, if the first case was triple negative, if it's early mets, we should look to be sure that it couldn't be an HER2 positive case, to put all the chance for the patient to have a targeted treatment. And also, of course, the oncologist should recommend HER2 targeted therapy if the test result is positive without any discordance. What is important here is if the pathologist responds but the result is equivocal, we need to wait for alternative tests before going to a final decision. Of course, no treatment if the test is negative. And the big change here also is if the HER2 test result is ultimately deemed to be equivocal, even after reflex testing with an alternative assay, the oncologist may consider HER2 targeted treatment. So this is a big move here, because we know from some data that some cases that were 1+, 2+ responded in clinical trial. So there are some cases that they may benefit. So we can, after a multidisciplinary discussion, apply treatment to those equivocal patients. So what is globally the evolution of the guidelines? There is, for immunohistochemistry, a step back to the FDA criteria to accept the 10% of 3+ or amplified cells as a definition of HER2 positivity. So for amplification, we have the change in the cutoff with the ratio superior or equal to 2, and in case of single color, a ratio superior or equal to 6, and the gray zone being between 4 and 6 copies. Another key message, especially for the pathologist here, is to score both immunohistochemistry and ISH at the single cell level. So not looking a group of cells, but looking cell by cell. This is the way the cytogenetician counts cell by cell. And I think it's very important to give the result in terms of percentage of positive cells. And even with ISH, it's positive if we have more than 10% of amplified cells on the slide. There are some unresolved issues for heterogeneity. We know that we have 3 types of heterogeneity. We have cases where we have a large cluster of amplified cells in a background of unamplified cells. We have cases where we have some small amplified subclones in a background of unamplified cells. And we have cases where we have isolated amplified cells that can be some sort of accident, but they're probably not the same meaning as clusters. And if you are familiar with gastric cancer, you know that in gastric cancer, on a biopsy, it's positive when we have 5 cells that are positive if they are in a cluster of cells, but not if they are isolated. So here it's probably different if we look here where we have large clusters and some areas where we have 1 cell here, 1 cell there. Here we really need to look at ISH, and sometimes we have surprise because sometimes all the gland is amplified. It's only a problem of fixation. It depends. So that's why it's important to control by ISH in those cases. And the field selection, as I said before, is very important to determine the level of amplification. So you have here the difference between small clusters of isolated cells and large clusters. And what do we do if we have less than 10% positive cells? We clearly have amplified or 3+ cells, but it's less than 10%. So here, First of all, we need, in my opinion, to retest, to ask for another block or for a lymph node metastasis, if we have one, to see if we have more cells that can be positive. If it's still less than 10%, so it becomes an equivocal case, because you cannot be sure that it's positive, and if you are completely convinced that you have amplified areas, you can have a discussion. But if you don't decide to treat the patient, or if you decide to treat the patient at an early stage, clearly, if one day the patient is metastatic, you absolutely need to retest in priority those type of patients, because you have one, you have different options. You will have an HER2 metastasis, you will have an heterogeneous metastasis, or you will have a negative metastasis. So here you really need to retest the case. The committee, the CAP, ASCO CAP committee urges patients to enroll in prospective clinical trials when they are equivocal, because today it's a transitory recommendation to treat those equivocal cases, but we need to have more data on the biology and on the behavior of those patients. I add some personal comments. You probably have heard of T-DM1, which is the same molecule as trastuzumab, Herceptin, plus M10-SIN, that is a very effective cytotoxic, but very toxic. We cannot give it by IV injection, but it's binding to trastuzumab, and then it's internalized into an HER2 into the cell, into the cytoplasm, and there is a release of the drug into the cell. So the cell has to be HER2 positive. It's the same mechanism of action as trastuzumab, and it's not an association of trastuzumab with drugs, as is the case usually, but it's an association. The drug is coming directly into the cell. So if we have an HER2 positive case like that, in my opinion, it's okay. It's really okay to give T-DM1. But if we have an heterogeneous case like that or like that, with very few 3+ cells, in my opinion, it's not a good case for T-DM1. Today, we don't have any guidelines for T-DM1. T-DM1 now is released in the United States for metastatic breast cancer. It will soon be released in Europe, or it's already released in some countries. But I really have a personal concern with that. So I think I finished for HER2, because they have lights. I had some other things on HER2, but I can stop here for HER2. It's okay? You want me to continue or to stop? Yes, okay, I have very few slides. So. Just to go with you through monosomy, because monosomy is not so frequent, but we don't have a clear definition of what is a monosomy case. And we have, with monosomy, different options. So we can say that we have a monosomy when we have at least 50% of the cells where we have only one chromosome 17 signaled by FISH or SISH. And we can have monosomy, like here, so in this upper left, so you can see in green is chromosome 17, so only one signal, and two signals for HER2. Here we have a clear monosomy, but with this monosomy we have a clear amplification. So we can say that we have an amplification. And here we have monosomy cases with also clear amplification. And here we have a kind of amplification of chromosome 17 along with HER2, because sometimes we have a co-amplification of the area that is recognized by CP17. In terms of polysomy of chromosome 17, We can have different also possibility for this polysomy. We can have what is called the simple polysomy, where we have an equal number of HER2 and chromosome 17. So you can see here you have said we have 2 and 2, 4 and 4, 3 and 3, 5 and 5. So this is the classical polysomy, and we have moderate between 3 and 5 extra copies of chromosomes of the chromosome 17. And when we have more than 6, it's a high polysomy. And by definition, we can consider that we have a kind of amplification, because the ratio will be less, of course, less than 2, because it will be 1, but the number of copies will be higher than 6, so it could be a positive case. And then we have complicated polysomy that are happily less frequent, with only a segment of chromosome 17 or long arm of chromosome 17, so more genes that are involved, or whole chromosome 17 polysomy that are extremely infrequent. So this is another example of chromosome 17 monosomy. So the simple case, one copy of chromosome 17, one copy of HER2. Monosomy associated with gene gain, but not with amplification. Here, for instance, you have 3 copies of HER2, but only 1 chromosome 17, but it's not a clear amplification. And here, it's monosomy plus a real amplification. So what is important here is not to look at chromosome 17, so not to look at the green spots or to the chromosome 17 spots, but only focus on how many HER2 copies you have. And if you have more than 6, you have an amplification. If you have less than 6, you don't have an amplification. So we still have a lot of way to go with those guidelines. Probably it's like the lymphoma classification. We will probably have a new HER2 guidelines maybe in 2, 3, 4 years, but it's still changing, and it's very exciting because we are doing HER2 now for more than 10, 15 years, and we still are not completely there in terms of guidelines, and we need to go again and to try to understand what is the biology and what are the patients who respond, because as Dr. Sain said, for ER and for ER, PR and HER2, there are very good negative predictors. If they are not present, the patient will not respond. But we still need to do a lot of progress in terms of identifying the good patients for the treatment, the HER2 positive patients that will respond and the ones that will be resistant. And I think it's a kind of back to the future. A case that was positive 10 years ago was negative 2 months later. And so the new guidelines is yesterday that we had, but more complex. But I think it's really for the patients. It's really to give a maximum chance for the patient to benefit from treatment. It's finished for this talk.